I was kind of like living my life as a yoga teacher in Vermont and a life coach and just humming along. And then I got that call that my dad had died. And I didn't even, I thought it was a joke. Like I didn't
Yeah.
believe it. I realized I don't really know anything about grief. Like I
Mm.
have never been through this. My body doesn't know what to do. My soul doesn't know what to do. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
doing it all wrong.
There comes a time, somewhere after 50, when you realize home isn't just about where you live. It's about how you live. It's about who you're becoming and what you're ready to make space for. I'm Juli Ford, real estate expert and longtime wellness coach, and someone who's lived in a multi-generational home for the past decade while reinventing my life and my business. And this is Home After 50, a podcast about what it really means to find, shape, and come home to a new season, to a new home, to a new version of yourself. Whether you're thinking about upsizing, downsizing, moving in with family, or just asking bigger questions about what's next, you're in the right place. Each episode, I will share stories, insights, and real strategies for women redefining home and life on their own terms. Because after 50, home isn't just a place, it's a calling. And this time, it's yours. Welcome back to Home After 50. Today's conversation is a deeply personal one, and one that I think will really resonate with so many of you who are navigating grief, loss, or a major life transition. My guest today is a dear friend, Anjali Budreski. She's a certified yoga teacher, a life coach, and grief and loss provider who specializes in supporting people through some of life's most tender moments. Anjali is trained in the grief mentor method, and she brings both professional wisdom and lived experience into her work. Since the unexpected loss of her father in June of 2024, followed closely by her mother's stage 4 breast cancer diagnosis, Anjali has been living inside grief, not pushing it away, not trying to fix it, but allowing it to become her greatest teacher. In this conversation, we talk about what grief actually looks like in real life, not just after a loss, but while caring for aging parents, navigating uncertainty, and learning how to live inside the not knowing. We explore anticipatory grief, compound grief, caregiving, boundaries, self-care, and what it means to stay connected to love, even when everything feels fragile. This is an honest, spacious conversation between two women walking parallel paths, and my hope is that it makes you feel a little less alone, no matter where you are today. Let's get started. Hi, Anj.
Hi.
I'm so glad you're
Yay.
here.
I'm so happy to be here with you.
I feel like we've talked about doing this for a long time, and I also feel like of anyone, I think you probably knew maybe more than anyone, or possibly you may have been the only one at some point that knew that I wanted to have a podcast for a really long time. And
Yeah.
and I feel like so many conversations that you and I have had, because we live kind of far away from each other most of the time, I feel like so many conversations that you and I have had, we've like said afterwards, wow, we could have recorded that conversation because it's so like applicable to what so many women we know are going through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so happy that you're doing the podcast and that you've come to this awesome place with it. And so fun to see your growth and expansion.
Oh, same. And I want to talk about that today too. And I think it's so
Yeah.
fitting that as we're speaking, you're not home.
I'm not home. I'm home, but I'm in a different home.
You're in a different home. So
Yeah.
say a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I am on Cape Cod, which I always think of as a spiritual home. It feels like a soul home to me. And I'm with my mom, and I actually have recently moved in with her for the month of January and maybe longer. We'll see. But I'm here to support her in her cancer journey, and she's had a lot of health challenges lately. So it just felt, something felt very right about the timing of coming home with her. Um, and being with her at this time. So, yeah, so I'm here and I'm home with her. I'm home with my mom.
You're home with your mom. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we, for anyone who doesn't already know, have a deep mom connection. We call our moms the moms,
the moms.
the moms, because they've been friends since they were 9 years old and they actually introduced us to one another 17 years ago. So we went out to tea with the moms on Saturday. And actually thinking about it, like over the course of all the time we've known each other, the four of us actually spending time together is not that frequent.
Yeah, we haven't spent a ton of time, just the four of us. And that was so special. And just to think we're still with the moms,
I
like
know.
through thick and thin.
Yeah.
And we're kind of on this similar journey now, like with their health and their care
Yeah.
and their lives. And we get to support one another, which is amazing.
Yeah. It's so funny because I feel like we've always been on these parallel paths, even though our lives on the surface are in many ways so different. Like we've always said that, you and I.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of funny that we didn't meet earlier in our lives. Obviously,
Yeah.
we met when we were supposed to meet. So the fact that our moms have known each other since they were 9, but we didn't meet until we were like in our 40s. I know you're a few years younger than me, so maybe you were
Yeah.
almost 40 when we met. Or no, maybe we were in our 30s.
I think in our,
Yeah, we were
well,
in our 30s, like late
late 30s.
30s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And it's so funny because, we do have different lives on the surface, so like I'm here in the suburbs in Massachusetts and I've got kids and I'm kind of an indoor cat, I like to call myself.
That's perfect.
And you're up in Vermont and you're an outdoor enthusiast and
Mhm.
you're a yoga teacher and you're so like active and it's so funny. So like on the surface, we don't look like we have similar lives at all. But ever since we have known each other, we have been, I think, on a deeper level. So I guess that's how I'd think of it. Like
Yeah.
a below the surface level, we have been really like side by side along these sort of parallel tracks in, I think, our soul development.
Yes, absolutely. I feel the same way. Yeah. We do lead like our day-to-day lives feel different, but yeah, our souls are so connected always. And it always feels so easy. Like, so we have led many retreats together, you
Yeah.
and I. And I have led retreats with a lot of people. And I always feel like with you, we almost don't, we're like, oh, we're going to meet at the retreat. Do we need to plan? Like, we almost don't even need to, because we're always on the same page and we always feel really aligned in our thinking. So it's been very easy to be in the flow that way. And I think that's a rare gift. Like, I think to have that connection and that reading each other's minds and being on the same page, it just feels like a rare gift that I'm so grateful for.
I feel the same. I feel the same. And it's funny
Yeah.
when you say that because if someone were listening to this and they don't know us, they would think, "Oh, you guys must spend a lot of time together." And we actually don't, right?
Yeah.
Like we
Yeah.
I'd say like the time that we've spent together has been like intense times because we'll run
Yeah.
these retreats together and we'll be like living and sleeping in the place that we're
Yes.
having the
Yeah.
retreats in. And then we'll have these like long phone meetings because we're states apart in the planning stages. But then we could go weeks or months without talking to each other.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it was so special, like, even though we don't see each other in the flesh all that much, I feel like we know what's going on with each other. And I just felt like it was so
Yes.
special when my mom was recently hospitalized and you came here because now, like in my soul home on Cape Cod, we're closer. We're a lot
Yeah,
closer.
you're more nearby. Yeah.
Yeah, and you came right down and you got out of the car and I just hugged you and we were in that we're both like, "Oh, we're in this together. There's a lot going on." And I just felt so supported by you. It was like, this is what I need because I've been in the hospital with my mom and in rehab with her for about a month. This was a recent thing that happened and just to have you come just felt it felt like the perfect timing and such a gift.
Oh, I'm glad. It was really special for me too. And this has been, I just want to acknowledge like the last year and a half of your life
Mm.
has been very intense
Yeah.
with your parents, beginning with the
Yeah.
loss of your dad.
Yeah. 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 It has really been intense. And it's also, um, what I have learned about grief lately is that, um, the deeper we love, sometimes the deeper we grieve and the intensity,
Mhm.
but there's so much love. And I kind of just feel like since I lost my dad about a year and a half ago, and then subsequently my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, um, or recurrence of that, I just feel like the universe is so alive with love. It's almost like the
Mhm.
harder the thing, the more support appears, the more synchronicity appears, the more help appears, the more I am grateful for all the time I have. And I'm so grateful to be here with my mom right now and that I can be with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've had to rearrange your life to do that, but
Yeah.
happily you were able to do that. But I want to
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit more about what you
Yeah.
just said, because it made me think about that's interesting, right? You're saying that, during this time of, I mean, it's intense. Like your parents were going through a geographic transition. Like they were selling a
Yeah.
house and moving. It was like a big transitionary period. And literally, like a week from the finish line, your
Yeah.
dad unexpectedly
Yeah.
died.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. There
so
were moving boxes. Like the paramedics had to come in. There were like the house was full of moving boxes. So yeah.
it was a sudden shift in
Yeah.
in your life, your mom's life, your family's life. And it's interesting to me what you just said about like that the more, you know, I don't want to rephrase this incorrectly, but what I heard was you're basically saying it's almost like the more you need the love to show up, the more it does. And you know what's
Mm.
interesting is I thought, oh, I can totally see that. And also I think, oh, that's interesting. Is it always there and we just notice it more when we need it more? Do you know what I mean?
Love that. I do. I do think it is there. Um, I think it always is there, but sometimes we actually have to call upon it or we have to ask for help
Yeah.
or when we lose someone we love or when something shifts so dramatically, we might just simply appreciate everyone and everything around us so much more.
Hmm.
It's like they're here. We are with them. How do I even become more present rather than on my phone, rather than
Yeah.
distracted? It's like, oh, I guess I don't take things for granted.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
It's funny when you said that, I was reminded that when my dad was dying, and I think about this a lot.
Yeah.
When my dad was dying, we knew he was dying, and we had been told he had like 6 to 9 months to live, and then it turned out it was about 3 months. And we had a lot of support. We were all there for him. And then in the last week of his life, we knew the time was very close.
Yeah.
But I still think back, it's funny that I would laugh about this, but I still think back to like the day he died, we were taking turns being by his side and he was at home. And I was, at that time, I was working for a nonprofit and I was writing grants a lot and they all had deadlines. And so I was literally in my dad's room while he was dying, like writing a grant because I think about it now, it seems so weird. But the
Yeah.
thing was, you don't know in those times how much time you do have or you don't have. Like
Yeah.
that could have gone on for days and days and days. And I
Yeah.
was there with him and then I would periodically like sit at my computer in the room next to his bed and
Yeah.
write. And when I think back on that, if I were hard on myself, I would be like, what in the world were you
Right.
doing, Julie? Like, why? Why were you writing a grant? But I didn't know, like, that was the day he was going to die.
Right. Well, this is the thing is like what you're touching on in me is like we don't know. And then this idea of surrender. Like
Mm.
I found with like when my dad passed, it was unexpected. It was in his sleep. and I couldn't control it. I couldn't change it. It was like, oh, I need to accept this really fast. We have to make arrangements. We have to not only plan like services, but we have to find my mom a place to live because they were like moving and they hadn't quite sealed the deal on the next place. So I had to accept it really fast. But with my mom having, a diagnosis of stage 4 cancer and more unknowns, I want to control it. I want to know she's going to be okay, or I want to know what the next PET scan is going to say. But moment to moment, we really don't know. And so the practice becomes like, I need to let go of control. I need to surrender to the moment and just be with whatever the wave we're on. It could be the wave of there's something coming up, or it could be like the wave of calm. Nothing really is happening. But it really speaks to that idea, I think, of we don't know and how hard that is for us humans that want to know. We want to know everything. We want to know everybody's going to be all right, or we want to know how long we have with them.
Yeah.
But we don't know. And so that practice of practicing trust and surrender is a big one for me.
Yeah. And how do we live in the I don't know, right? Like when life is just sort of like still rolling along in other ways.
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
balance that?
One thing that has helped me so much is so my fear brain tends to take over. I call it in like my coaching world, the lizard brain,
Yep.
where I get very afraid. Like I find, especially at night when I'm trying to go to sleep, it's like, oh, I didn't hear from my mom today. And then my fear brain takes over.
Mhm.
So I tend to get scared and I tend to get anxious about any little new complaint or issue, especially with my mom, because I love her so much.
Yeah.
And one thing that's helped me so much is the practice of affirmation, not as a way of bypassing what is real, like not as a way of ignoring my pain or my fear. But if I can shift, like say I'm laying in bed and my brain starts to get into this very fearful place around what's going to happen or what's wrong, I will literally say to myself, like, my mom is loved and protected and taken care of right now. She has everything around her that she needs. And I just start creating little affirmations, hand on heart, say these affirmations, and it puts me to sleep. It helps me to sleep. It helps me to calm down. So that's been a practice that's been really helpful for me. It might not work for everyone. It might be like, oh, that's too like airy fairy or something, but it really has helped me to shift my mindset and like consciously know that I do have some agency, that I don't have to be just like at the whim of my worries.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so funny when you're saying that. I think that's beautiful and
Yeah.
helpful. And I do something similar, but it's this very specific thing. And my mom is probably gonna, I don't know what she's gonna think when she hears this on the podcast. So, I live upstairs from my mom. Her apartment is downstairs. And so my mom has some problems with walking and mobility. And but she does come up and downstairs. But I worry about her when she goes down the stairs. We installed like an extra railing.
Yep.
And so she has two railings, but I do worry every single time she goes down the stairs. I don't worry about her coming up. I worry about her going down. And every single time she's at my part of the house and she goes back to go downstairs, that lizard part of my brain immediately triggers to,
Yes.
oh my God, don't fall down the stairs, don't fall down the stairs. And then, so now I've made like a new mantra because I don't want to put it out there that I'm thinking that she's going to fall down the stairs. And I literally, the whole time she walks down the stairs, I just say to myself, my mom is making it safely down the stairs. My
Oh,
mom
I
is
love
making it
that.
safely down the stairs. And then I can hear her when she gets to the bottom. But it's crazy. Like I can't stop myself from having the thought start. But what I can try to do is change the trajectory of the thought.
I love that. And I think it's totally normal to, if your loved one is sick or if you don't know where your kids are, or whatever. I think it's so normal to have those fears, but just to know that we do have some agency over our own mind, our own thoughts, and we can kind of turn some of those thoughts around. And this leads me also to say that I know I was speaking of feeling the love that's connected with grief and all of that, but I have to say that after my um, dad passed, I would lay in bed every night and cry like before I went to sleep. Like the depth of the pain was very real. And I honestly thought that there was something wrong with me. I was like,
Oh.
oh, I'm a, there's something wrong with me, until I really started delving a little more into grief and loss. And it was like, no, you are just, this is normal. You are grieving. This is totally normal. So I'm just saying that in terms of, you don't have to go from point A to point D. And if you are in a place of caring for parents or multi-generational living with elder parents, that, or if you've lost someone you love, that grief is very real.
Mm.
But it is how we relate to it consciously. We can relate to it very consciously or unconsciously. I love what one of my grief mentors has said, like, when we have a loss, we didn't ask for it. We didn't want to lose our parent in their sleep, or we didn't want to lose someone we love. But what we do have control over is how we relate to the grief and how we relate to the loss. So we can't control it, but we can have some agency over how we relate to it. And that's really helpful for me.
That's interesting. So I'd love to talk a little bit about the grief coaching work that you're doing and, how that's showing up in your work with people. Because I think you've been a coach for as long as I've known you, so many, many years. And I know that recently, following the loss of your dad, and I also want to acknowledge your dad wasn't the only person you lost. You had a dear aunt who went through a long process of illness and dying. And so there was a lot of loss that's been coming up in your life over the past several years. And I know that you've transitioned a lot of your coaching work into the grief space. And I'm so curious to know more about that and understand more about that, because I think we don't talk about this a lot, right? Like every single one of us are going to lose people that we love. And there's so many ways we experience that, whether it be sudden, like your dad, whether it be like we know it's coming, like my dad. There's just so many ways that loss lands in our life. But I don't think we're really prepared a lot of the time for how to know what to expect from our own feelings and processes.
Yeah, it's so true. There's not a lot of grief education. And the first grief training that I did, which was called the Grief Mentor Method, was taught by this incredible woman, Megan Reardon Jarvis, who is a trauma specialist focusing on grief and loss. And she was talking about how in her training to be a therapist, a certified therapist, she received very, very little even mention of grief and loss, which is so crazy to think about, right?
That
Like
is
as a
crazy.
therapist, you would
Yeah.
think there would be some training. And so that's how she, kind of got into it. But I think for me, I have always loved coaching, and um, I was really forced when, with the loss of my dad, I was really forced to confront grief in a new way for the first time. And that's the thing about it. This is why grief can be so hard, is our nervous system has no orientation to this thing that's happened. We've never lived without our dad, or
Mm-hmm.
we've never had our brother die or not with us, whatever it is whatever kind of loss we're experiencing. Grief
Mm-hmm.
is more than losing a person. Obviously, we all know that,
Yeah.
but we don't have a framework, and it's very disorienting to the body, to the nervous system, to
Mm-hmm.
lose someone,
Yeah.
because we haven't had that experience before. We all have, like, we're just familiar with, like, oh, we know our father will be there on our birthday, or we know that we'll see them at the holidays, and then suddenly that person is gone.
Mm.
So that's why it's so disorienting. And yes, we don't have a lot of education around it. Or one of the things that I found really helpful, I have gone on to get a grief and loss provider certification. And one of the things that I find so helpful for me is having a language for grief and loss, having words to describe it. For example, people that I coach often don't understand like what's happening inside of them. Like, why do I feel this way? What is going on for me? And when I say, oh, that sounds like cascading grief or compound loss. When
Mm.
we experience a loss, usually that's just the tip. Like the loss, there might be a big loss, but then someone is who hasn't ever worked or had to make money suddenly has to get a job.
Mm.
And then oh, and then you lose your pet, right? And then that's another loss. Or wow, we can't live in this house anymore because I no longer have a partner to help. So then the one loss becomes cascading, where there's like a cascade of things that happen.
I can imagine that cascading loss too would include even things you think of as small things like, oh, I don't
Yes.
have anyone to go to the movies with now. Or I don't know why I said
Yes.
movies, but whatever those things are. Or like,
Yeah.
who am I going to go to lunch with
Yeah.
or take a walk with? Or like
Yeah.
those just like even daily or just, light like hearted things and then on top of that the much more complicated things like money and your home and oh my gosh holidays and
Yes. Everything.
so what's the difference between cascading grief and compound grief?
So cascading grief would maybe be more like the verb. They are similar, but
Okay.
the way I think of cascading grief is like the cascade of events that happen when we lose someone we
Hmm.
love. And then compound grief is so we might have a small grief where it's pretty isolated and like maybe, a child that was living us, you probably can relate to this, like no longer home, right? And there might
Happening
be
to me this week.
yeah. So there might be grief around that, but
Yeah.
it might not feel like very complex or compound.
Right.
But the compounding is even there's something called disenfranchised grief. Like if a certain population has already experienced so much trauma,
Mhm.
perhaps like the indigenous people in our
Yeah.
own country, then there's and they lose someone, it's there's a compounding effect to the loss.
Mm.
So I would say compound grief is when a lot of different small griefs or even medium or bigger griefs add up on one another.
Okay.
So it could be multiple losses. It could be a change, like a loss creates a change of living situation.
Hmm.
It could be even like sometimes when someone dies, then there's lots of family dynamics that happen.
Yes. Yeah.
And we might have rifts in our family, and then we're like, oh my gosh, I don't even have that person anymore to confide in.
Yes.
So, yeah, so the cascading, I think, is like more the flow of those things, and the compounding is multiple griefs compounded together.
And I imagine in your coaching work that you probably also encounter like complicated grief, right? I mean, you and
Mhm.
I were fortunate. We had dads who we had great relationships with. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would say my relationship with my father was pretty uncomplicated.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
lucky,
yeah,
it was not complicated. But
yeah.
when you lose someone, and I'm sure you come across this in your work, when you lose someone who maybe you have a complicated relationship with,
Mm.
that brings a whole other set of factors, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That's a huge one. And I think you and I, with families that are pretty harmonious, are not the norm,
Right.
less the norm, sadly. And I think it's more often that there probably is some complication. I see that more often that there's complicated grief.
Hmm.
And it could be like complicated grief is like, I love this person and they were sometimes abusive to me or they
Hmm.
didn't speak to me in a nice tone.
Hmm.
That is complex grief. And that is very common. And even with my dad, who we had a great relationship, especially as I got older,
Yeah.
and I just like was able to let my own ego go and like not be so like mad at him about things or
Hmm.
something. But we had some complexity, and like this is really interesting to admit and say, but even with this person that I miss so much, like last night, my mom and I were having a little cry about it was their anniversary yesterday on January 11th. And we were like doing some reflecting and celebrating and crying. Um, Even with my dad, who was just a bright light and such a good dad, we still had some complexity and hard times. And there was like, with his passing, there were some, there was some feeling of freedom, or
Mm.
like he's free and like maybe I'm free. He could be a little critical. I think my mom would share this when she hears this podcast. He could be a little critical and
Mhm.
judgmental. And I was like, poof, that judgment is gone. Like it's not there.
I can
And
under I
there's
can
like a
understand that.
freedom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can understand that because my dad was very, I would say he was pretty old fashioned. And I've thought about, there's been some things that have come up, especially with the grandchildren and choices that the grandchildren have made. They're all like in their 20s now. And sometimes, one of us has said to the other one, like, I don't know what dad would have, how he would have handled that.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
I can kind of understand that.
Well, and just to normalize that, like, there can be, like, even with a person you love so much, when they pass, there can be such complex feelings there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just to be so gentle with ourselves around it and to know that whatever you feel is normal. One of the things that I really love to emphasize is that you are the best expert on your own grief.
Mm.
Like you can get support, you can be held in safe containers and all of that, but we're each the best expert on our own grief and kind of like what works for us, what doesn't work for us. Um, yeah, so
Yeah. And what about, I think sometimes about this idea of like anticipatory grief and also the kind of grief that isn't necessarily like the loss of a person entirely, but the loss of their, say, like abilities or independence. I mean, your mom and my mom are both facing so many changes in their health and their lives now. And I think we also have the unique situation where both of our moms openly talk about death and dying, lead death cafes. I don't think that that's typical. Don't think I meet a lot of
no.
I don't think I meet a lot of people whose moms run death cafes, but
I know I
uh,
forgot that both of the moms run death cafes.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very interesting, isn't it? Because they have such a history because they met when they were so young. And then there were many years in between. I'd say the years that they were raising us, where I don't think they talked much at all, not for any reason except
Yeah.
life just took them in different directions. And
Yeah.
then in their later years, really, reconnected much more deeply. I'd say around the time we probably went and met on that mother-daughter retreat that you and your mom were leading, that my mom invited me to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And when you talk about that, I know we're both going through that anticipatory grief, which is so different than a sudden loss.
Yeah.
And something that's been actually so helpful, I keep hearing this from my clients who are coming to me specifically for grief work, is something that is so helpful that I offer to them is the idea of pendulation, because we can sometimes feel like, especially I think as like spiritual people, that we need to like dive into our grief and we should
Mm.
cry when we need to cry. And that was a huge question for me when I lost my dad, was like, when is it okay to cry? Like, should I show my feelings now? Like I'm about to
Mm.
teach a class or I'm
Oh,
in a
okay.
public
Yep.
space and like, when do you cry? When do you not cry? Because I was like, you might feel like, oh, like spiritual circles have told me I should just cry and let it out, but I don't know if this is okay. So there were a lot of like questions for me around that. And
Mm.
something that my clients have said is so helpful is, which is a very somatic, I think it comes from, I want to give credit where credit is due, Peter Levine, somatic experiencing. This idea of pendulating is letting yourself feel the grief. It might be a hand on the heart, a few deep breaths. I hear I'm in the store, I hear a song that
Mm.
triggers me. I want to cry. Let yourself go into that for a few minutes, maybe a minute, maybe 5 minutes, and then pendulate over to, I'm going to get the groceries. I need to go pick up my
Mm.
kids. I need to keep going with my life. So we can go back and forth in a way that's less like traumatizing to the nervous system.
Yeah.
And so that's called pendulation, where you give yourself some time, you stay with it, you feel it, so you're not ignoring it, but then you go back to, like, I also have responsibilities. I've got to
Yep.
do the podcast or whatever. So
That's
that's been really
fascinating.
helpful.
I love that concept because I think I'd never had that language for it, thinking of it like a pendulum. Because
Yeah.
I think I probably, if I had to think about it, I would have said it was more like compartmentalizing things. But
Yeah.
compartmentalizing things feels like you're kind of locking it down,
Yeah.
where the pendulum swing feels a little bit more natural, a little bit more open, and
Yeah.
like you're not holding it in, but that you're just like allowing. And
Yes.
then,
It's like
yeah,
a wave, right? Like I'm at the ocean on the Cape. It's like the wave comes into the shore. We feel it. We don't ignore it. We're not repressing. We're not bypassing it. But then the wave goes back out and we have an exhale and we're like, okay, I still need to get my work done today, or I need
yeah,
to attend to something else. So
yeah.
that's really helpful. And my clients have named that as one of the most helpful tools that I offer, as well as what's called titration. These two kind of go hand in hand. Titration, you think of a little tincture bottle. It's like
Hmm.
you can do your grief in a drop, and then you can put the lid back on the bottle. You can close it up. You can do little drops rather than like, and I think in the early, there's very, I work with my clients very differently if they're in their early stages of grief or they're
Mm.
maybe like 2 to 5 years in. It's very different. In the early stages of grief, I feel like, if you need to like go full bore and you're crying on the floor and you can't function and you need to like, you can't even get in your car and go to work or whatever, that's normal. Like that's to be expected.
Mm.
So I think that's a little different, like in those early stages. But like when you're a little further in, allow yourself to titrate it, to be with it, to consciously face it in little drops that work for you,
Mm.
not feeling like you have to open the whole jar at once or you
Yeah.
have to let it. And that's really helpful. Like I used to think like after my dad died, I'd like take his beautiful necklace that I have that he always wore and bring it on my hike. And then I'm like, I'm gonna like do this ritual in the woods and let myself cry. And it was almost like too overwhelming. It was
Mm.
too much. And
Mm.
I was like, I can just hold this. I can just breathe. I don't have to do a whole ritual. I don't have to
Hmm.
make it a big thing. So those two things can be really helpful.
Oh, that's amazing. That sounds really helpful. I I wanted to ask you too. Well, I have two things that come to mind. One is this sort of like trajectory of grief, right? So when you were talking about like if a client comes to you and they're in their say like early stages of grief or, say it's been a while, I'm imagining like this is so individual, right? There probably is no possible like
Yeah.
grief path that looks the same for everybody.
Yeah.
But is there like I don't want to say a typical path, but help me understand a little bit. Is there like a guide that is helpful to think about in terms of, say you're in it very fresh?
Yes.
Is there something that you can offer or something that I can think about that is like, okay, it's normal for, because this is so fresh. And maybe I can hope that in 6 months, in a year,
Yeah.
in 2 years, it might just be easier to carry this.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I think a good grief mentor or coach or guide or counselor, therapist can sometimes hold that hope for you because when you're in it, you if you've just lost a child, for example, or you've lost someone so important to you, you can't see that you're going to feel okay. Um, in 6 months, you might feel like I will never be okay.
Hmm.
I am never going to feel okay. This is not okay. And especially when things are like out of order, like the loss of a child
Yeah.
isn't in the natural order of things, that can even feel more traumatic and acute. So I love the idea that we can hold hope for each other
Hmm.
and we can say, I know that it's true. You feel like you will never feel okay, but I know that at some point you will feel at least a little bit better.
Mm.
So that's a really beautiful thing. And I do have some resources. I'm happy to share these with you if you want to put it in notes or
Yeah, I would
anything
love
like
to.
that. Yeah, I have some resources on that path of grief, a couple of books that are so helpful. And I really, really appreciate Claire Bidwell Smith, who I did my grief and loss training with. Her book, Conscious Grieving, I highly recommend because it does lay out a path that people go on typically, at least like her clients and through what she's seen, um, like the journey of grief and how there's like in the beginning, we we don't know which end is up. We might not be able to get out of bed. We might feel like our lives are over as we know it.
Mm.
And we might even we might not be able to work or function. And just to get through the day is really hard. But that does change and soften over time. And what I love about her work is it actually gives us hope that at some point we might even transform the grief in some way and even create like a legacy project for our loved one. Like maybe they
Mm.
were really dedicated to clean water and we find ourselves like creating a foundation in their name. So I love the idea of legacy projects and also kind of that. I think the old way of thinking about grief is like pull yourself up by the bootstraps and like go back to work, but we get to bring the person with us through. We're not trying to erase their
Mm.
memory. We're not trying to get rid of them. We actually can start to bring them with us in our life through how we think about them and maybe through anything we create that's honoring them or in their name.
It's
And I
so,
think it does get easier. It
yeah,
does get, and I know you know that with your
yeah.
dad.
It's so interesting that you said that because only a few months ago, might have only been a month or two ago, I had this realization in a different sort of way that all of the work that I'm doing now is really, in some ways, a tribute to my dad,
Yeah,
which is so
beautiful.
interesting because it really all began with our losing him. But way before that, it began with my dad just always being uh, just a family-centered person. And our home, both of our homes, because we had a summer home and our year-round home, were always like the hub for family and friends. And what we've managed to create here with my mom and how that's impacted even my brother's family and my kids, it just feels like a beautiful tribute to his legacy. And so
It
right when
makes
you said that, I realized like, oh yeah, only a little while ago did I really sort of find words for that.
That makes so much sense. That makes so much sense that everything is culminated to kind of have you be where you're at. And it did start from what I've learned from you and what you've written with your dad's passing in that
Yeah,
process.
it
Yeah.
did.
And the word I was trying to think of when we, rather than, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and like get over it and move on, the term is continuing bonds. We actually, it's healthy to keep the bonds alive. It's healthy to create
Mm,
legacy projects. It's healthy to create rituals that we do every day or even on special like birthdays or anniversaries, which can be really hard. So, yeah,
yeah, nice. Anything else you want to share about like, how has this grief work affected your life and your work? Because it's really, it's a big theme for you right now,
yeah,
right? And I
yeah.
don't think you would have said you saw that coming, right?
No, no, I did not see it coming at all. I was kind of like living my life as a yoga teacher in Vermont and a life coach and just humming along. And then I got that call that like my dad had died. And um, I didn't even, I thought it was a joke. Like I didn't
Yeah.
believe it. Like they were moving. He had been like enjoying a concert the day before and eating a salami sandwich or something, something that he loved.
Yeah.
And they were, my parents were really excited about their their transition, like to their next
Right.
chapter. So yeah, so it was a real surprise. And um, I think the real, like how I got into this was that I thought I was grieving like healthfully, but I was really holding back.
Oh.
And a friend convinced me to do the Summer Institute on Cape Cod with her, where she was going to do one workshop. And she said, there's a grief training if you want to work with your. And I was like, oh, I don't know about this. But then I looked at it and I thought, I'm going to do this. And we were having lunch together after a session. And I said to her, it was like such a moment where we're eating our fish tacos, and I said, I don't know when it's okay to grieve. I don't know when it's okay to cry. I don't know how to grieve. And she said, she looked at me and she said, well, what about right now? Like, why don't you just let yourself feel what you want to feel? And she said, could you let the parts of you that are blocking you from grieving, that are questioning it all the time,
Hmm.
can you let them step aside and just allow yourself to feel what you feel? And I broke down so hard in that moment, like fully. And I was like, oh, I've been holding back. And that was my breakthrough moment. Wow, it's okay to grieve. There's no timestamp on grief. It was a year, almost exactly a year
Hmm.
after my dad passed, that I actually let myself feel. And I think part of that is I wanted to be strong for my mom. I wanted to be strong for my brothers. I wanted to organize everything. Well, we
Yeah.
had to, right? We had to do all that. And so I think
You
it's also
literally had to
really,
finish packing the boxes.
oh,
That was
yeah,
a crazy time.
that was a crazy time. We had spreadsheets, flow charts, lots of pizza. So I think that's what happens. It's like when that ends, and I think that's why sometimes people's grieving process starts 6 months to a year later,
Hmm.
because you don't have time, right? Or you might be kind of holding it together for your kids
Yeah.
or your family. So that was the moment that I realized I don't really know anything about grief. Like I
Hmm.
have never been through this. My body doesn't know what to do. My soul doesn't know what to do. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
doing it all wrong. And so I did the course, and then I realized it was so helpful that I decided to do like an official training in it later.
Hmm.
So that was kind of my trajectory. And now, I'm a lot of my coaching work, which was focused a lot on life transitions, which
Right.
losing someone is a huge transition.
Absolutely.
But it's kind of morphed into just naturally people really want to talk about their grief and get support.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so natural at our age, right? In our 50s, that we
Yes.
do, have many people in our world who are going through major transitions, including grief and loss.
Yeah. And I think it goes with the whole, you know, with what the work you're doing, which is so valuable, is offering an alternative and almost making it okay to feel our grief, to feel what's going on in our families,
Mm.
and to do something about it, to
Yeah.
make a change. And I think I have to say, Julie, I haven't said this to you, but I think with me choosing to come be with my mom, I was really inspired and even like I think took some courage from your work that this isn't weird. Like I know that's weird to say. Like how could
Mm.
you think it would be strange to like support someone you love? But I think our paradigm is just the nuclear family. And it's like weird if you're going to go live back home, even if the person really needs you. Like how weird, like that to me feels so wrong. So I really credit you with inspiring me through your work to know that it actually might be possible. And it is working out so beautifully.
I'm so glad. And thank you for saying that. I'm so glad to know that some of my work has had that kind of effect. But it's interesting, and I'd love to talk about that a little bit more. It's really wild how some things that when I guess like when you're in them, they seem so normal. And I think in previous generations were so normal to just like live with our loved ones and care for them, became not common at all. And, there's so many reasons for that, right? There's so many sociological reasons, economic reasons, cultural reasons. But I do think the tides are turning, and I think they're turning out of necessity, quite frankly, because we have such an incredibly growing aging population. So many of us have aging parents now or aging ourselves. And we also have a care crisis, an affordability crisis. Like there's just so many things that are converging, I think, to make us all kind of like re-examine what does this mean to care for one another as life goes on, as we age or as our families grow. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I love the idea. I'm just realizing this now. Like I know I mentioned titration and I hadn't thought of it this way. But for anyone out there who is feeling the pull to try this way of living, or like I did, to come support someone in your life that needs you, you can try it. I decided to come down for a month and just see how it goes. Because I have a whole nother life where, and work where I live in Vermont. So you could give it a try and just have the courage to see what happens if you try it out and follow your heart.
And luckily, some of us have commitments that are a little more flexible than others, right? For some people, it's going to be really hard. Like if you're a teacher, I'm just make up any job, right? But if you're a teacher working in a school, you've got to physically be there, and your mom is 2 states away and needs support. Like that is really complex,
really hard.
Luckily, if you're a business owner, there are a lot of people who work remote now. So whether they're business owners or employees of companies, but they're able to work remote. Another weird gift of COVID, right, is that many of us, more portable than we used to be because we learned we could be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I just want to acknowledge that for some people, obviously, that flexibility may not exist, but I think for many of us it does.
Yeah. Or for a time, even for a time it might work. But I really appreciate you saying that because I think that is so true. And the other piece of that is that people there's not always the space. Like I can be here, and my mom does have a guest room in her new space. Right. But that might not be the case for everyone. So it makes it more affordable for me. But just recognizing that, and also I'm constantly like, I am so grateful that I have family here. I'm so grateful that I have connections here. It's like, I already have that because they've been here for a while. So I think it is important to recognize like the privilege in that. And every day I feel grateful about it, for sure.
Yeah, you've got friends and cousins, and your mom has so many friends that makes a huge difference, because I do think a lot of people feel really isolated and without that support, and that does make a difference. There's so many ways I think that we just need to explore. How can we find creative solutions for helping our aging parents? All of our family, but the aging space I'm specifically thinking about personally and professionally.
I think like thinking outside the box too.
Yeah.
Like I was like, okay, well, how can I, I do teach yoga classes in Vermont, and I was like, how can I make up for some of that income? And I plugged into a studio here. So it also it does take action on my part to try to do that, but it's actually worked out really well. And so I'm grateful for that too, that I can plug into some other places here. And I know that doesn't always work for everyone, for sure, but it's definitely helped me to feel connected.
Yeah. I'd love to ask you, how are you thinking about the unexpected nature of the future at this time?
Like the future as in my future, or the world? What's going on in our world?
Mom, the whole thing, everything. No, I specifically was thinking about your mom because, right now you've decided to be there for the month of January. I know you've already said, who knows, maybe it's going to be longer than that.
Yeah.
Because I think this is one of the things with aging, with death and dying, with illness. there's so many uncertainties, and it's really hard to plan your life around the uncertainties.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one thing that I keep trying to remember is because it is so uncertainty, I want to keep taking care of myself
Yeah.
within this scenario. So I've set up some structures for me here where I have some rhythm and routine that is really in like selfishly or unselfishly, because I feel like the more I take care of myself, the better I can be a caregiver, right? So I
100%.
think having some like rhythm and routine is so important. And and yes, there is uncertainty. My mom and I did have a conversation today. We just started talking a little bit about hospice, and we started talking about what will it look like when I am going back to Vermont in February, because I have a whole bunch of commitments there. And we were just talking about like, how are you going to feel about that? Having an open conversation. And would you want to have some more support in the form of
Hmm.
hospice, having someone come into the home? And we had just we were eating lunch and we had a really nice open discussion about that. And so we are thinking outside the box, and we're opening to different scenarios and possibilities, whether I would spend more time here. But I think I will be going back for a little bit, but I have the sense that being here has been really helpful and that I'll be back in some way, shape, or form, like sooner than later.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's like, it's a little scary and like interesting to think about that, but I do feel like I am trusting myself to know what will be needed, and also really listening to what my mom wants and needs.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's an interesting part of it, isn't it? Like, so
Yeah.
I love what you said about making sure you're caring for yourself, because I had another guest on the podcast a month or two ago, Amber Chapman. She's amazing. And interestingly, while I was speaking with her, she was also living with her parents
Oh,
temporarily
yeah.
to help with difficult time with their health. And she just said so succinctly, like the quality of the care is directly in relationship to the health of the caregiver. And so this idea that we need to make sure that we're tending to ourselves, especially when we don't know what the length of time is going to be. I mean, I kind of joked about that. I was sitting there writing a grant while my dad was dying, but the truth was that could have gone on for weeks. I didn't know.
Yes.
I do have compassion for myself. Like if I could beam myself back there now, I probably would have just like offloaded that, not done, not
Yeah,
done
yeah.
that. However, I can have compassion for who I was at the time, thinking that I needed to do it. But but the truth is you don't know sometimes how long these things are going to go on. And if you neglect your own self-care,
Yeah.
then you could really start falling apart just when you're needed the most.
Yes, absolutely. I think the self-care is so important. It's not selfish. I love that Amber brought that up, because I think the more we can care for ourselves, the quality of our caregiving is so much greater. Um, and yeah, and I also think, Julie, like really, I just said this, but I'm going to say it again, really trusting yourself to know when you have that instinct, like I am needed or I do need to be there. It's easy for us to kind of brush that off or say, oh, maybe later. Or like with your
Mm.
dad, you're like, I can write a grant, I can, keep working. But I found that when I really listen and trust myself, it's everything is so much better and more in alignment, really. And I did have this sense in coming here. I was like, I've been kind of waiting to see how my mom would be feeling. And I had this sense that maybe coming down in the winter months, especially when everybody's like inside and there's kind of less energy and support and there's
Yep.
less family here. And just less than a week after I was here, I mentioned to you, my mom had an incident where we had to call 911. And I was with her, thankfully. And I was thinking, wow, like, what if I wasn't here?
Yeah.
And what if she was out on that walk by herself? Like, what would have happened? And so I just felt so grateful that I was listening to that and
Yeah.
that I am here. So I just want to encourage anyone listening, like if you're feeling that pull and you are able to support and be there, to just listen to yourself around that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have, could be someone else. It could be that you hire someone else to do the care, or it doesn't have to
Right.
be you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And also what you said before about really trying to listen to what your mom needs, because we're navigating both of those things, right? Like there's us as the daughters, the caregivers, like what do we think is needed? What do we
Yes.
think our moms need? But also like what I had talked to Amber about this a lot too, this idea of, you know, who do you want to be in this moment? Right. Part of why you're showing up is obviously your love and care for your mom and your concern for your mom. But it's also about you in, and I'm just using you as an example because we're talking about your situation right now. But like, it's also about like, who do you want to be as a daughter, as a person at this moment? But then also balancing that with, well, what does your mom want? And what does she
Yes.
need? And can you talk about that?
That's a great point. That's such a great point. And I think about open-ended questions like,
Mm.
how are you feeling today? What do you need? Is there anything I can do for you today or get you? Like, I think asking open-ended questions puts the power on that person,
Mm.
and we're not having to control things and take over for them. We are listening deeply and letting. I always thought I love the idea in a women's group I was once a part of was the term letting the woman lead, like letting her lead the work,
Mm.
letting her lead the transformation. And so we can give that to those we love or those who are sick in our lives or need extra support, is letting them lead. And we kind of are like a little bit behind, like following, listening, attuning.
That's so interesting. And I love that. And also at the same time, there are going to be people who are more inclined to articulate their needs than others, right? I feel like
Yes,
your mom and my mom, knowing them both, would be pretty
yes,
good at saying what they need when asked. But I
yes,
know there are other
yes,
parents, people out there who'll be like, I don't need anything. I don't need
yes,
anything because it's habit to say that.
yes,
So I
yes,
wonder if there's a middle ground you have to know who you're working with here, right? You have to know your family, know the person that you're providing care for. If
yes,
they're the type of person who's never going to ask for what they need, and you just know
yes,
that because you know them, maybe the question
yes,
needs to be a little bit different. Like, would you like
yeah,
soup or a sandwich when I go to the
yes,
store? Or like something very
totally.
specific, right?
Or I would love to make you dinner tonight. Would you like that? Like offering choices,
Mm-hmm.
offering options. That
Yeah.
maybe is like a nice middle ground.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Julie, I've seen this evolution with my own mom where she is a hospice nurse. She was in
Yes.
nursing.
Yes.
She leads death cafes. She's good at caregiving. She raised three children. She was an amazing partner to my dad. Like, so for her to actually ask for help or to have a need, I think has been a shift for her. But
Mm.
I've seen that evolution, and it's so beautiful to see that where she's perked up and said, I actually do need help, or I would love it if you came down, or
Mm.
I'd love help folding the laundry, or, she
Yes.
actually, it's like one of her favorite things to fold the laundry. It's very sweet. So she doesn't really need help with that. I love that she loves doing that. But I think we might notice in our loved ones that they evolve,
Mm.
and to trust that they will evolve, that they will grow in their own ways. And I agree with you. Some people might be very good at stating their needs, and some people might not. And I think we as women have often been very much programmed to be caregivers. We're rewarded for being good, nice, and taking care of people. We
Yeah.
get rewards. So that can be harder to declare, to claim, and declare our needs, or to ask for help,
Yeah.
or to say, I need more support. I mean, I think that's another thing. We might be, as the daughter, the middle-aged daughter, very capable, be the one to take a lot of the caretaking. but we might need a lot more support. We can't do it alone. So there is this line of like that the person who is needing the care needs the care, but then the caregivers need the care too, right? And so it kind of goes down the line. So yeah, I think it's a great contemplation for sure.
And I think that, the caregivers do need care. And I think that when we make sure that we're providing for our own self-care, we can show up better to provide the care for the person we're caregiving for. And also, I think that there's a little bit, and I'm learning this. I am not expert at this at all, but I think there's a little bit of an art to kind of like, I don't know how to say this, like joyfully providing care so that the person who's receiving the care can like feel that you really want to do it.
Yeah, I love that. Or that you don't want to do it and you do it with resentment and the person feels that.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, it's like that's the other side of the coin to that. Yep.
So also this brings up the whole point around boundaries with people we love. That it's also okay to say, hey, I am so tired. I can't do that tonight. I know you want me to help you bring the Christmas decorations to the basement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Real example.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Real example. And you're like, I don't want to go to the basement right now. But anyways, I'm kind of joking because this is a real life on the ground example. But to say like, I don't have the energy to do that right now, but I would love to help you with that tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a great thing, right? So it's okay to have boundaries with people we love, and they can be gentle boundaries that just are boundaries that help us to be not resentful and joyful.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. It's a dance for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure you've had experiences.
We're figuring it out as we go along, I mean, I have to acknowledge my mom is just very, very good. Like she'll lean the other way. Like she will, we have to like ask her to tell us when there's a light bulb out, or do you know what I'm saying? Like, 'cause she's very sensitive to not wanting to add to the weight of anybody's load. And so we have to figure that out together, right? Like make sure you tell us like so that we can help. But then again, she's just very great about being patient about things like that. Specifically, it's funny that you said that about the Christmas decorations, because there was a box that needed to be put in her utility room. And she was just like, maybe sometime this week, someone could put the box in my utility room. Of course, Rod goes right down there and does it. But she's just very lovely about understanding and asking for things in a way that has a lot of flexibility and respect for where everyone else is at.
I feel like your mom and my mom are just such lovely, just kind, sensitive humans. I got here and, she has this office space that I'm in now. And I was like, I did the same thing. I'm like, could I put like a few socks and things, so I could feel a little moved in, and I felt bad. And of course, my mom was like, you can take over the whole room and like just move everything, put everything where you want. And I know not everyone has that with their mom or with their family. So it's not always the case, but I feel grateful that there's a sensitivity there on both parts. But I also think like it can be something we work on with.
Yes.
It's something we can work on through open conversations. And some people don't know how we're feeling unless we have the courage to say it.
Yeah, absolutely. We hit the mom jackpot, that's for sure. Also, we hit the friend jackpot, and I'm so grateful for you in my life. And I know we both have a lot of uncertainty in front of us as to, our mom's health and what the next months and years are going to look like. And I'm just so grateful to have you by my side through it all.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here on the podcast, and just so grateful to have you in my life too. So thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you could be here. I'm going to include some resources that you're going to share, some links. Great. I'll have those all in the show notes for people. Any final thoughts that you just want to share with people? Is there, I know we talked a lot about aging parents and grief today, and because that's really what's up for both of us, but any parting words of wisdom for other people who might be listening, going through similar situations?
Yeah, I think one thing is just to be really gentle and compassionate with yourself. I feel like when these things happen, whether it's losing someone or reconfiguring a household, whatever it is, we're kind of inventing it as we go, and we might not have a template for how to navigate things. And that's the way it is. So just to be really gentle as we try to figure things out. And a little grief practice that I really love that's so simple that anyone can do anytime. You could do this multiple times a day, but if you are grieving, if you are experiencing any kind of loss or change or challenge, um, a lovely little practice I do with my clients is to just place your hand on your heart and ask your grief, what do you need today?
Hmm.
And that's all you need to do is say, what do you need today? And it could be that grief says, I need a walk in nature, or I need a friend. I need a phone call with a friend, or I need a beautiful, delicious latte, or whatever it might be. So just to ask our grief what it needs is a really simple daily grief ritual that we can do. So I just want to share that as something that's been helpful for me.
I absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yay.
Thank you for being here. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode. Before we wrap up, I wanted to let you know that I have a few resources for anyone who feels touched by today's conversation and would like a little more support around grief. Anjali has shared her 3 favorite grief books with me, and I will put those in the show notes. You can also find Anjali and learn more about her work at anjalibudreski.com. I'll link that in the show notes as well. And if you're local to Cape Cod, Massachusetts, she's also hosting an upcoming in-person offering called Holding Space for Grief on Cape Cod. That's on Sunday, January 25th, 2026. From 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. and it's hosted at Yoga of Yarmouth Port. I'll also include a link to that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today. If today stirred something in you, if grief, change, or caregiving is part of your life right now, please know there's no right way to do this. You don't need to rush. You don't need to explain your timeline to anyone. You are allowed to move gently. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks so much for listening to Home After 50. If this episode resonated, I'd love it if you'd come hang out with me on Instagram. I am at It's Juli Ford, ITSJULIFORD. Just remember, no E on Julie. That's where I share ideas and behind the scenes about multi-generational living, real estate, business, and creating a next chapter that you love. And if you're curious about whether multi-generational living might be right for you, you can grab my free guide. It's in the link right in my Instagram bio. It's a simple way to get started imagining what's next. Because after 50, home isn't just a place, it's who we're becoming. See you next time.